Friends, will you pray with me? Holy God, God of all hope, may the words of my mouth and the thoughts and questions and hopes of all of our hearts be acceptable to you, for you are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. You may know this about me and my family already. We love baseball. I don't follow it very well, but I love going to watch baseball. When my family lived in New Hampshire for 3 years, we would drive the 2 hours to Boston to get to see the Red Sox play at Fenway Park. This was the early 90s, so the Red Sox were not very good. And we would start up and out in the nosebleed seats, as my dad called them. And as the game went on and it was clear the Red Sox were losing, other people would leave and we would gradually get to go closer and closer and closer to the stadium. So when I heard this story, it's the one that I wanted to share with you this morning. It's a hot summer's afternoon, and a woman walks up to a little league baseball game. Maybe she's a relative or a family friend arriving a little bit late. The sign is not working, so she approaches a boy in one of the dugouts and asks him, "So what's the score?" 18-0. "We're behind," he responds. The woman gets a sympathetic look on her face, as you would when you heard such news. "Boy, you must be feeling pretty discouraged." I imagine that woman talking to us right now. "Boy, 29 million Americans unemployed, you must be feeling pretty discouraged. 3 months of virtual worship and at least another 2 to go, you must be feeling pretty discouraged. Schools closed since March, and no one knows what the fall will look like. You must be feeling pretty discouraged. Over 120,000 people having died of COVID-19 in the United States since February. 400 years of racial injustice in the United States, and systems that continue to perpetuate inequality and violence against Black and brown bodies. Boy, you must be feeling pretty discouraged." I imagine her talking to Sarah, the Sarah of our story. 90 years old, way past menopause, and childless. Boy, you must be feeling pretty discouraged. Yes, I want to tell her. Yes, we are feeling discouraged. I've had a couple of conversations this week where we've talked about the weariness of this time. People feeling discouraged about the financial impacts of the global pandemic. People feeling discouraged about public health impacts, personal impacts, the enormous loss of life caused by COVID-19. People feeling discouraged by racial injustice that seems not to have improved much in 50 years. Violence, protests, calls for change. The truth is, we are discouraged. We are weary. Yes, our hearts are heavy. For some of us, this isolation is triggering depression and anxiety that we were managing just fine until quarantine. Our children are struggling with their mental and physical health. Instead of finding ourselves united as a nation in this time of uncertainty, we are more divided than ever. We are weary. We are discouraged. I imagine from our story this morning, Sarah in her tent, as 3 strangers arrive. Her long white hair is tied up under a headscarf. Her husband, Abraham, keeps telling her about God's promises. As many descendants as stars in the sky. Right. Abraham finally has a son, Ishmael, with the couple's servant, Hagar, but Sarah has no children. And she's 90, well past menopause. She is long past any hope of having children of her own. And here are these three strangers, and Abraham playing host, offering water, rest, food. He enters Sarah's tent. Make bread and do it quickly. The elderly woman bends over a bag of flour. Her hips and her knees creak as she squats on the ground to stoke the fire, as she kneads and bakes the bread. She doesn't speak to the guests, but gives her husband the bread that she has prepared. Abraham is the one who gets to wait on the guests. Abraham stands by as they eat. "Where is your wife?" one of them asks. "In the tent," Sarah hears her husband say, and then something unexpected. One of the visitors says, "I will surely return to you in due season, and your wife Sarah will have a son." Sarah knows better than to laugh out loud, but she laughs to herself. And why? Doubt? Disbelief? Surely, a baby? How ridiculous. After I have grown old, after my husband has grown old, will I have pleasure? Sarah's laughter holds the cynicism of a weary old woman who knows that this long prayed for word cannot simply be true. But there's more to Sarah's laughter. Not just doubt, disbelief, and cynicism. Relief. The unexpected release of 70+ childless years of grief. Will she finally get to hold her own child? Does she feel wonder, delight, pure joy? Surely, shall I have pleasure, she asks herself. An old woman's laugh that holds cynicism, yes, but also the antidote to cynicism, hope. Through a child's eyes, there is always hope. There is hope for this childless 90-year-old woman. There is hope for us in the face of COVID. This will not last forever. Those deaths will not be in vain. We can learn from this time, and we will be together again. There's hope in the face of 400 years of deeply institutionalized racism and white supremacy. We can change. We must change. We are already changing. And there's hope when you're playing baseball and down 18-0. Remember the woman in my opening anecdote and her words? Boy, you must be feeling pretty discouraged. But not a child, not that little boy, for a child lives in hope. "Why should I be discouraged?" asks the little boy. "We haven't even gotten up to bat yet. Why should I be discouraged? Is anything too wonderful for God? In due season, all things shall come to pass. In due season, when the guest returns, Sarah will have a child. In due season, this pandemic will end, and it will be safe for us to be together in person again. In due season, we will learn to see the biases within us, the invisible ones. We will be able to own our racism and to act not out of fear or guilt or shame, but out of respect, love, and justice. In due season, I believe that our nation's people will rise up so that we may truly live into that which we proclaim. that we are a nation of liberty and justice for all. This is a hopeful proclamation. In due season, hearts and lives will be transformed, and our world will resemble God's beloved community. Why should I be discouraged? We haven't even gotten up to bat yet. Why should we be discouraged? A new baby has just been born into our church family. New carpeting is here on our sanctuary floor. As a congregation, we are learning about discernment and what it could mean to become open and affirming. And simply, open and affirming means making a public covenant of welcome to persons of all sexual orientations, gender identities, and gender expressions. Open and affirming can be expanded to include others who are often excluded. Why should we be discouraged? We now have energy-efficient LED lights that have replaced our old fluorescent ones at no cost to us except the generous gift of Bernie's time. Why should we be discouraged? Peaceful protests are happening all over our nation. Police officers are taking a knee, marching hand in hand with protesters. Legislators, governors, and mayors are talking about how to change policing systems to make them safer and more effective for everyone. Why should we be discouraged? On Friday, people across the country celebrated Juneteenth, the day when we mark the end of slavery. And I had never heard of this day until just a few years ago. This wasn't part of the history that I learned. Yesterday, tens of thousands of people joined the virtual Poor People's March on Washington to call for a moral revival and systemic change so that all of our siblings can earn a living wage, can access health care, quality education, and safe housing. Why should we be discouraged? We, the people of God, the followers of Christ, who has said to us, "When you do unto the least of these, so you do it to me also." The Jesus who said to his disciples, "Go and love and serve as I have loved and served you." Why should we be discouraged when love and hope live in our hearts and in our children's hearts? Beloved of God, why should we be discouraged? For now is the time to hope. Nothing is too difficult or wonderful for God. And we, like Abraham and Sarah, are called now to the work of love, so that in and through us, God's hope may take root and God's transformation may take hold. Beloved of God, may it be so. Amen.